The headlines: federal government suspends helicopter landing fee enforcement as oil price surge. Niger's army repels attack on drone base. President Trump vows to intensify attack on Iran if it continues to block oil flow. And now the news in detail. Starting from home, the federal government has ordered a temporary halt to the enforcement and collection of helicopter landing fees imposed on oil and gas operators, following concerns raised by stakeholders in the petroleum industry. The directive was issued by the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, during a meeting with the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Lekki, and representatives of major oil industry groups at the Aviation Ministry's headquarters in Abuja. Keyamo directed that the enforcement and collection of the helicopter landing fees be suspended for an initial period of 2 months. According to a statement by the Minister's Special Advisor on Media and Communications, Tunde Moshood, the meeting brought together officials from the aviation and petroleum sectors. Meanwhile, the United States Embassy in Nigeria has issued a security alert warning of a possible terrorist threat targeting U.S. government facilities and American-affiliated schools in the country. In the advisory released today, the embassy urged U.S. citizens in the country to remain vigilant and take precautionary measures. These include keeping mobile phones charged in case of emergencies and familiarizing themselves with emergency exits when entering public buildings. Despite the warning, the embassy said consular services will continue as normal at its missions in Abuja and at the U.S. consulate in Lagos. Outside Nigeria, a terrorist attack on the military drone base at the airport in Niger's Tahoe has left several soldiers injured. Local authorities say the army fended off the attack, which also led to the death of several assailants. Eyewitnesses say unidentified assailants pulled up on motorcycles and that they saw exchanges of fire from the airport and the city center. The drone base was built in 2022, and drones from Niger's Air Force often operate in the area, which frequently faces jihadist attack. This comes weeks after the Islamic State group targeted the country's main airport in Niamey. Elsewhere, Guinea's main opposition figure, Salou Diallo, has accused President Mamadi Doumbouya of attempting to build a one-party state after the government dissolved 40 political parties by decree. Diallo is the leader of the main opposition party, Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea, which was among the parties that were dissolved. The dissolution of the parties comes weeks ahead of legislative elections, which are viewed as a key step in the transition from military to civilian rule. Up north, Egypt has raised domestic fuel prices up by 30% today, blaming exceptional global energy pressures caused by the Middle East war, which has disrupted oil supplies and shipping routes. In a statement, the ministry said the adjustments were driven by disruptions in supply chains, rising risks levels, and higher maritime shipping and insurance costs, which have pushed petroleum product prices to levels not seen in years. The increases announced by the Petroleum Ministry apply to gasoline, diesel, and natural gas used in vehicles. In the UK, members of Parliament have rejected an Australia-style ban on social media for under-16s backing, instead flexible ministerial powers. Recall that after a ban on sites like TikTok, Instagram and Snapchat was brought in for children in Australia at the end of last year, the first country to impose a ban, similar plans were backed by peers in the House of Lords in January. Supporters include actor Hugh Grant, but critics such as Children's Charity, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, warned of young people being driven to dark corners of the internet as a result. The Conservatives said that there was an emergency and ministers should legislate to protect children. Liberal Democrats, on the other hand, said failure to commit to a ban was simply not good enough. Stay calm on Globe while President Trump vows to intensify attack on Iran if it continues to block oil flow. Do stay with us.
You can listen to Adami Mogo 93.1 FM from any part of the world. Download the Adami Mogo 931 FM app from Google Play Store and Radio Garden. Follow us on Adami Mogo 931 FM on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have eyewitness stories or exclusive to share, contact the Adami Mogo FM newsroom via mail at newsroom@adamimogofm.com. Or you can dial 070-634-03583. You can dial 090-319-69629. Adami Mogo 93.1 FM Lagos, Voice of the Light.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now to the rest of the news. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to hit Iran 20 times harder if it continues to interfere with oil exports in the Strait of Hormuz. His threat, which he issued via post on social media, came hours after he asserted that the war was a very far ahead of schedule and could be short-lived.
It will be over?
No,
talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very soon. Look, everything they have is gone, including their leadership. In fact, there are two levels of leadership, and even actually, as it turns out, more than that. But two levels of leadership are gone. Most people have never even heard about the leaders that they're talking about. So it's obviously been very, very powerful, very effective. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. But the big risk on that war has been over for 3 days.
Responding to Trump's threat, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said his country would keep fighting as long as necessary, casting doubt on U.S. President Trump's insistence that the conflict would soon be over. Nevertheless, the price of oil, which had surged past $100 a barrel on Monday yesterday, has dipped closer to $90 a barrel since Trump's remarks. Away from the U.S., counting is ongoing in Nepal as a party of rapper and ex-Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah is potentially just one seat away from winning a supermajority in parliament. The Rastriya Swantra party's win would mark the first time in decades that a single party has won a majority in Nepal, which has a two-system format that makes it difficult for any one party to secure an outright win. If the RSP secures a two-thirds majority, it would also be the first time in decades that a single party has achieved this. And talking business, despite trade tensions with the U.S., China's exports have surged in the first 2 months of this year. Official figures show export jumped by more than 20% in January and February, which is almost 3 times the rate predicted by economists. It puts the country on track to top the record-breaking annual trade surplus it saw in 2025. The announcement comes as U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to visit China in early April to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The world's second-largest economy is heavily reliant on exports as it faces a number of issues, including weak consumer spending, a shrinking population, and a property market crisis. And talking sports, President Bola Tinubu has sympathized with the family and associates of renowned football administrator and former Super Eagles head coach Ogboi Odibide, who passed on yesterday at age 88. Tinubu's condolence message was contained in a statement released today by his special advisor on information and strategy, Bayo Ononuga. The president also extended his condolences to the Nigeria Football Federation (NFF), the National Sports Commission (NSC), professional colleagues and fans of the administrator, who distinguished himself as the first indigenous coach of the Super Eagles in 1982. The president commended the contributions of the Modakeke High Chief to the development of grassroots football and to the strengthening of football administration in Nigeria. Before we bring Club Fire to an end, here is a recap of the biggest stories. We told you the federal government ordered a temporary halt to the enforcement and collection of helicopter landing fees imposed on oil and gas operators following concerns raised by stakeholders in the petroleum industry. Outside Nigeria, we told you a terrorist attack on a military drone base at the airport in Niger's Takoa had left several soldiers injured. Local authorities say the army fended off the attack, which also led to the death of several assailants. It was in the news that Donald Trump threatens to hit Iran 20 times harder if it continues to interfere with oil exports in the Strait of Hormuz. And that's Club File, as produced by Dimachuku Ndbisi. To join us at 2 o'clock for more stories on the briefing on our Dami Mogo 93.1 FM Lagos. I am Ogboi Mark. Good afternoon.